Hi guys, so recently I received a question about the color grading in the music video for Marshmello Paralyzed, especially the scene where it's like in the past, like 30 years in the past or something. So I happen to have a similar shot, one of the similar shot taken at a soccer field I took a while ago, which is kind of similar to one of the scene in the music video. So maybe we'll have a quick look at how we might approach something like this. It shouldn't be too hard, and honestly it could be done in any program really, either Premiere Pro, After Effects, I'm sure Final Cut as well. But today we'll just be doing it in DaVinci Resolve because, you know, all the scopes and things are kind of easier to see, but the principles for everything is pretty much exactly the same. So you can apply this to whatever, even Photoshop or Lightroom for still photos really. So yeah, let's get started. If you're new to DaVinci Resolve and want to set up a split screen like this, first of all, you can go to the edit page and just bring in your footage. So obviously I have a footage where I want to color correct, and the footage of the music video I kind of want like as a reference to copy the color grading basically. And then you can go to the color page where you're doing the coloring and press on the clip button. Now down here you have all the clips in your timeline, so I can select multiple clips by holding Control, or if you're using a Mac you just hold a Command. So I left click here to select my clip, press Control, and then click on the reference clip or the music video clip. Now you have to enable the multi-screen or split screen, so you go to View, go to the split screen and turn it on and select selected clips. So if you select selected clips, now you can select multiple clips and it will all show on the monitor. So you can select 4 or 5 or whatever. I think I've selected 4 before, I've never tried 5 or 6. So anyway, today we'll only be selecting just 2. Now if you want to turn the split screen off, you just press Control Alternate and W, so turn the split screen mode off. If you want to turn it back on again, just Control Alternate W to turn it back on. And so right now I'm just going to close the little clip tab so we can see our footage like a bit clearer and larger. So I just turn off the clip tab and we'll be starting to do some color grade. So we'll just try to match this footage to this one over here, which is the music video. So the first thing we might want to do is just try to match the lighting first. So obviously we can look at the scopes. I just select the waveform here. The left side is the waveform of our clip, and the right side is the waveform of the music video. So obviously you can see straight away like the dark parts or the shadow part is kind of like much darker than our music video, which you can kind of pretty much tell by eye. So I might lift that up a bit in the primary wheel. I'll just go to the lift and just pull up the brightness. And also the highlight part is kind of, you know, you can see it's shooting off the screen, so the bright part is a bit too bright. So I go to the gain and drop that down a bit, something like that. And obviously the mid-tone where the two clips are lying right now, I think the mid-tone of our clip is kind of slightly lower, it's a bit darker. So I'm just going to increase the gamma to increase the mid-tone up a bit, something like that. And again, that affected our shadow part a bit, so I have to pull back the shadow down a bit. And again, the mid-tone was pulled down slightly, so I might increase the mid-tone again slightly and pull the shadow back down a bit. So yeah, maybe the mid-tone slightly too bright. Now I'll pull it down a bit. And okay, let's say that's a pretty reasonable start. Now let's create another node and maybe we'll start to tackle some of the coloring and the color grading. So I just press Alternate S, or on Mac I think it will be Option S to create another node, and then we'll start color grading. Now just looking by eye, we can kind of sort of see that the music video is kind of tinted towards either yellow or orange or green, but obviously it's pretty hard to tell by eye since I'm not an artist. I don't have any talent in just looking at the colors and seeing like the palette. So we might want to use the scopes to help us a bit. So the first thing is obviously it's tinted towards like orange or yellow or red. But where, you know, how much red, how much orange, how much yellow, and where is it in the shadow, the highlight, or the mid-tone, or whatever. So the first hint we might be able to see is if you look at the waveform of the music video, in the highlight part you can see straight away like that each channel is kind of separated. So obviously if the channels are right on top of each other, you see like a white line. Basically that means pretty much the area of footage is not tinted towards any color. But here you can clearly see that the red part is like the highest, and the green is also high as well, but just slightly below the red, and the blue part is like way down below. So we can kind of guess that the footage is tinted towards the red and green, right? Because the red and green is higher than the blue, so it's tinted probably towards yellow in the highlights. And also since the red is slightly higher than the green, it's probably tinted towards just slightly towards the orange. So what we can try and do is maybe we go to the gain color wheel of the highlights, and we maybe put in some well, basically yellow orangey color. So let's have a look. We just pull the color wheel towards that direction, and you can use kind of like the waveform as a guide to how much which direction to pull towards and how much by. So obviously right now you can see that the blue part is dropped down, similar to the music video part, right? But if you look right now, for our video, the green channel is kind of higher than the red, so it's tinted more towards the green, which if you just look by eye, you can see that, yeah, probably our footage is tinted towards the green more than the music video. The music video is tinted towards like the red and the red part more, so it's like more orangey. So we're just going to go to the gain wheel and maybe just pull it up a bit towards the red, so the red's slightly higher than the green, and something like this, so we can match it. There you go, something like this. So it's much more similar now. Now, obviously, sometimes when we change color in different parts of the image, it will also affect the brightness slightly. So we might have to correct the gain slightly, the brightness. So just pull it up a little bit. And yeah, that's a pretty good start. Now you can see the before and after. If I turn off this coloring node, so if I press Control D, it just shut off this node. Or again, if you're using Mac, then it's Command D. So yeah, it's pretty a reasonable start. Now, the next thing I might try to tackle is the color of the grass. So I might create a new node, again, alternate S. And for this one, I think in real life, I think these two grass should be kind of quite similar in color, because obviously they're both kind of lush and growing well. They're not like dying or anything. But it could be, the difference in color could be due to like the different camera. Maybe I'm using a Sony, this one is a Canon or something. It could be like different shades, how the camera sees different color. So I might go into the graph here and go to the hue versus hue. So I'll basically change the hue or the shade of the green parts slightly. So again, I'm going to hue versus hue graph, and I'm just going to select 2 points as anchors. And then in the middle point, I can kind of, you can see, twist the green shade around. Now, what shade of green do we want? We can maybe use the vectorscope to see the different colors within our footage. So obviously, if I, let's say, go to the offset view and, you know, pull the purple color right in, you can see that this part right here is the color of our music video, right? So if I pull it towards blue, it comes down here to the in the scope. If I pull it towards green, it comes something like this. So I can undo this. And right now, if we look at the green part, I think it's kind of pretty similar, but maybe not exactly, because if you maybe just have a quick look, I just pull the offset down. I think our green right here is a bit more saturated, right? Because as you can see, it kind of like it's a bit saturated and it's a bit below the vector scope of the top one. So the top one is kind of more towards yellow and slightly maybe less saturated. So I'm going to pull this thing towards yellow a bit. So you can see I just pull it until it kind of matches with each other like that, and maybe just pull the saturation down slightly. So I'll go to the hue versus saturation, and again I'll pull the saturation, pull the saturation of the green part down slightly. So it's kind of like, you see, if I pull it down too much, it will just become way too less saturated. And maybe just put it just right here, so it's similar saturation. So now if I turn it on and off, you can see this before, this is after. Now the shade of green is much more similar. And if you've never used the vector scope before, it's nothing too complicated. It's basically just this color wheel, so you can see the different colors within your footage basically. So the further away from the middle the graph kind of shoots towards, the more saturated that color is present in your footage basically. So let's say if I add purple, you can see the graph is now shooting out towards the purple side. So our footage is obviously kind of saturated with purple colors. If I pull it towards the middle, then it's basically not saturated with any colors. And if I just undo that, you can see our footage is pretty much saturated or tinted towards yellow and orangey, similar to the music video we're trying to copy basically. Now the next part we might have a look at is the deep shadow. So obviously he's wearing a black short, I think, well, we will assume, and the short is also like kind of in the shadow, so it's quite dark. So now we're gonna maybe have a look if it's tinted towards any color or another. So we're just going to select I've just turned the clip back on and select just the music video clip. I'm going to use the qualifier tool just to select the dark area right here. Now to be able to see the dark area, we have to, the area we've selected with the qualifier, we would have to turn off the split screen. So go to the view split screen and just turn it off. And if you press Shift H, you can see the area you've selected. Now obviously I don't want to select the jersey as well because it's like kind of blue, so kind of will affect our judgment to see if the dark area is kind of tinted towards any color or another. So I'm just going to use a power window, maybe a circular one, just to isolate just the trouser area. So I'm just going to select just the trouser area, or not the trouser, I keep saying trouser, it's obviously a short. So now we just select the shorts, and now we can go to the vector scope and we can zoom in if you want. You can hold alternate and you just use the mouse wheel to scroll in, and we can also turn up the brightness of the scopes as well. And now you can see that the trouser, or the short, again, mistake, just keep calling it trouser for some reason, but the short is tinted towards kind of like green and cyan. So if you look at the color wheel, it's probably down towards this color. Now if we have a look at our video, so I just select our video, and again I just use the qualifier tool to select our trouser quickly, and use the power window again to isolate our shorts. Finally I got it right. Okay, you can see that our shorts here is tinted towards kind of the yellow and the range, the yellow and the red area. So it's tinted towards this direction, which is kind of makes sense because previously we've kind of tinted our image towards the red and the orange. Even though we did it in the gain or the highlight area, it also affects pretty much the entire image. So to correct this for our shadow area, I might go and select create another node. So I'm just going to undo this and undo the qualifier. I'm just going to create a new node, again alternate S, and for this node I'm just going to use the qualifier again to select the trouser and use the power window again. Don't know why I just created a new node in the beginning, but I obviously forgotten. So I'm just going to select the shorts again, and for this one I'm just going to go to the log wheel. I'm using a log wheel because you can control more kind of how much of the shadow is affected. So obviously if I use the primary wheel and I kind of tint each area, whether it be shadow, the mid-tone, or the gain, the bright areas, you can't really select how bright the area needs to be for it to be affected, or how dark the area needs to be for it to be affected. But if I use the log wheel, I can use the low range and the high range to select, okay, I want to affect only the really dark area or the really bright area, so you can have more flexibility. So for this one, I'm using the log wheel. I'm just going to tint the shadow down towards the green and the cyan, so it's more similar to the music video we're trying to copy. Now, so I'm just going to delete the power window, just going to turn it off, and delete the qualifier so it affects the entire image. So right now I think the if I turn the split screen back on, the correction kind of affected too much of the image. So it's not affecting just the shadow area, it's also affecting the mid-tone a bit too much as well. So I don't want to affect the mid-tone and the highlight that much. I just want it to affect just the deep shadow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn down the low range. So if the low range is like higher, it's just going to affect the entire image. So as you can see, if I turn the low range up, the blue that we've tinted our shadow is affecting the entire image. If I turn the low range down, it will only affect the really, really dark part. So maybe I'll just turn it down to maybe 0.1, something like that. And if I turn this node on off, so this is off and this is on, you can maybe the low range is a bit too low, maybe turn it up a bit more. So this is before, after, maybe you can turn up just a bit more, something like this. Now you can see a difference. So before, this is off, so it's more tinted towards red. Now if I turn it on, it's more tinted back towards the blue and the dark, so it's not so much kind of saturated towards the red and yellow. It's just a subtle difference, but I think you can definitely see it. So this is before, after, before, after, before. So now if you're just looking at by eye, previously you probably can't even tell that this is tinted towards like the red and yellow, but now that you see the difference using the scope and the correction, now we can definitely see that previously it was tinted towards the orange color, and now it's more kind of just neutral black and slightly towards the blue. So it's probably closer to what we would want. Okay, I think the bulk of the main grading part is pretty much done. You can see that the tone of the images are now pretty similar, like the shade of the green, the color of the reds and the blues and the sky, and the overall tint of the image is quite similar now. Now we might just put in like a few final touches, so I'm going to create another node. One thing that often happens in kind of like vintage footage, or like kind of when you go back in time, try to create like the old film kind of look, is the footage might be a bit more kind of dreamy and blurry. So one thing you can do is you can go to the second page of menu here and go to the MD. It's basically mid-tone detail. It's similar to the clarity slider in Lightroom or I don't think Photoshop has it. So it's similar to the clarity slider in Lightroom. So if you turn it up, the image becomes more kind of grungy, and if you turn it down, it's kind of become more dreamy. So obviously, like the with the vintage video or the going back in the past, we want it to be a bit slightly dreamier, and so we might want to turn down the mid-tone details a bit. Another guide you can use is if you look at the waveform, if we turn the mid-tone details up, you can see that the graph will become more spiky or become spikier. If we turn the mid-tone down, the graph will be smoother. So that's another thing we can use kind of like as a guide if you're trying to copy the dreaminess of a certain clip. You might look at how spiky the graph is and kind of just match the spikiness of your graph. So obviously if I turn the mid-tone detail all the way down, it's way too dreamy, and you can see the graph is way too smooth. So the music video here is kind of slightly spiky, so we might turn the mid-tone detail back up, maybe something along this line, maybe like -30, something like that. You also have to keep in mind that this music video I kind of got just downloaded off YouTube, so there will be compression and things. It will also lose quality, and it might lose contrast and become even dreamier than normal. So obviously when you're doing this, you might just want to match it to your taste. But another thing that we can also add is kind of the glow effect. So a lot of time in dream sequences, or if you're trying to simulate using a vintage lens, like an old lens, there will be like a glow in the bright highlights of the image. So like maybe like this area where it's like bright shirts and maybe the clouds, there'll be like a slight glow. So we can kind of simulate that in DaVinci Resolve by using the glow effect, or even in Premiere Pro or After Effects or Final Cut, I'm sure has a similar effect. But in DaVinci Resolve, we just create another node, again alternate S. Click on the open effects, and we'll just search here for the name of the effects, so glow, and then we'll see this one. You just drag it onto the node we've created, and now you can see straight away some part of the image is kind of like already glowing. Again, I'll enable the split screen again and the open effects. So what we can do with this glow effect is we can, first of all, we can choose how bright the part of the image has to be for it to start glowing. So we select the shiny region, and I reduce the shine threshold. Basically the entire image is glowing, but obviously that's not what we want. We want just the highlight maybe on the shirt and maybe the cloud just to be glowing, so maybe something like this. And if we again select the glowing image, we can see the end result. Basically right now it's probably glowing a bit too much, so we can reduce the brightness. We just want a subtle glow, maybe 0.1 or something, 0.82. Let's see before and after. So you can see there's just a slight haze or slight glowing around the shirts and around the cloud, which is the highlight. Now, obviously in this scene of the music video, you might not be able to see it too clearly, but if you go to the some other scene, like the close-up, you can see like there's a like glow where there's like a bright highlight. You can see as well along his knee right here where there's like bright highlight, there's like a slight glow, and also the clouds. So that's how you can simulate kind of using a vintage lens, or maybe like a dreamy sequence back in time or something like that. And again, it's all up to personal preference really, so you can like, you know, tune these settings, which I've kind of explained previously in like another video, but I think I actually did it in a Thai language, so maybe one day I'll do it in English. But basically there are some different options you can use. You can tint it different colors, or have the glow kind of stretch vertically or horizontally, but probably not. I probably wouldn't go into details here because the clip is probably longer than I anticipated already. Okay, that's pretty much it for today. I think the clip has gone on way too long already, but I hope you guys get some idea of how to approach kind of like emulating a certain color grade. And I'm sure once you get like a bit of experience of just using the different tools and reading the scopes, you can pretty much emulate any color grading, at least any basic color grading you want, pretty much that you see in movies or music videos or commercials. So if you see something you like, you want to emulate it, I'm sure you can, with a bit of experience, you can pretty much do it, not too difficult. And in any program really, DaVinci Resolve, Premiere Pro, After Effects, Final Cut, you name it. But the most important thing though that I always say is basically the way you film your video is pretty much as, if not more important than the color grading, the post work itself. So if you have like a certain color theme or a certain music video that you like, you want to try and emulate it, you should set up the scene, the props, like the costumes of the actor and the lighting to be as similar, if not exactly the same, as the thing you want. You can't just go out and like just film some random footage and come back in the editing suite and expect to like color grade to look like Blade Runner or maybe some other movies that you like. You know, I mean, you have to start all the way from pre-production and just the filming itself, and also the post color grading. Everything has to kind of work together if you want the optimum result and to get a footage that looks exactly like something you have in mind or that you like, that you're trying to emulate. You can't just randomly choose some random footage and try to color grade to look in like something that you like, or to look like something totally different from the way it was filmed. So that's just probably just something I want to leave you guys to think about with as well. But yeah, as I said, that's pretty much it for today. So I guess maybe if I have a chance, I'll see you again. Bye.